The Indianapolis Colts have made yet another move at the quarterback position, this time reinserting Anthony Richardson in the starting lineup. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And look, guys, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150. That's FanDuel.com to get started. Hello, everyone. I am Zach Hicks, your favorite film nerd and favorite co-host here at Locked On Colts and over at horseshoehuddle.com. I'm joined today by Destin Adams of A to Z Sports, my former colleague over at horseshoehuddle.com, but now over at A to Z Sports. And we're here to talk about the new breaking news, which is the Colts have yet another quarterback change happening. They're going back to Anthony Richardson. It feels like it's been a couple years since we've had this many QB changes happening in one season, Destin. I mean, got to go back to 2022, I guess, right? When they change quarterbacks.
Yeah, Sam Ehlinger's getting his arm ready in the bullpen right now because he feels the jitters of 2022 right now. So
yeah, Jason Bean's getting all excited. Like, we got a lot of stuff coming here with this Colts team, but in all seriousness, the Colts have made the move back to Anthony Richardson. We're going to talk about our reaction to that news. We're going to talk about just this whole cycle of Richardson benching and Flacco benching this past month and like why this even needed to happen or what really happened. I don't know. We're just going to talk about that freely there. And then we're going to close out this show by talking about what to expect with Richardson and kind of how like the clock is ticking now for him, for Steichen, for Ballard the rest of this season, and it needs to be a strong finish for him, for all those guys really to keep their jobs and have optimism going forward. But let's talk about our instant reactions to this move, Destin. It's actually quite funny because yesterday I recorded a live show with Ben Boris at Colts Film Room, and even though him and I had that handshake bet where I was saying Richardson wasn't going to start again, and he was saying Richardson was going to start again this season, him and I also talked about after the show, we were like, I don't think he's coming back this year. Like, it doesn't seem like it's in the cards this year. Steichen's been very adamant on Flacco, and it seems more like a punishment type thing for Richardson. Like, we're going to reset this thing in the offseason and get back to you next year. So I don't know what ultimately transpired to make this decision 24 hours later. Maybe it's purely performance related because, you and I, we watched the film, Destin, and Joe Flacco was not playing fairly well. So what do you think kind of happened here? What's your instant reaction? What do you think kind of happened here that led to this sudden change where Flacco was starting against the Jets yesterday? Now it's Anthony Richardson starting against the Jets.
My instant reaction about this really had nothing to do with who is going to be playing quarterback. It was just, man, they handled this so poorly publicly. Probably the worst you could have done without just like bashing the kid publicly. Like they did that. And I'm a big believer in accountability behind the scenes, not holding people accountable in the media, because I don't think that's necessarily the route to go. But man, like, you cannot go through this process with the vague answers you did and then come out today and I really enjoyed what Shane had to say before any questions came in. Obviously, he wouldn't have gotten a question to throw in Richardson starting just because the day before he was very adamant that Flacco was the starter against the Jets. That was what everyone believed. He comes in, makes the announcement before a single question comes in. I enjoyed everything he said. I just really wish he would have said it from the jump. Like, if you would have just said, we believe the kid has a lot to grow on behind the scenes, being a quarterback on and off the field. Like, there are so many political answers you could give to paint the picture without the full picture, if that makes sense. And the Colts didn't go that route. The Colts decided to go completely vague. And my favorite statement from today's presser was when Steichen was pushed on, do we now think Anthony Richardson gives the Colts the best chance to win? Shane said, "I believe whoever is out on the field gives us the best chance to win games." So, which essentially just undermines the entirety of the reasoning given for Joe Flacco playing quarterback, and I think it perfectly paints what what this decision was, which was directionless, dysfunctional, and I think they can say whatever they want to say. This decision was not made by Shane because the way he operated in the public eye was not that this was a decision he made, and I'm going to believe that until my dying breath.
Yeah. I will say with Shane Steichen is, yes, he's not the best handling media, but part of that is by design. I do know for a fact that he does not like to give anything to the media. It's very obvious from his press conferences, but I even know kind of the reasoning behind that. It's not super secret or anything like that, but it was told to me in confidence, so I'm not going to say it. But the reasoning, like, he doesn't talk to the media too much as a result in terms of like giving these answers, but to your point, when you make a big move like this, you have to at least have some sort of political language to it, or you have to have some sort of correct way to say it, or just how you take the bullets with it. And it's almost like the way that he's handled this, he's become like the meat shield for everything. And it's like he's throwing himself in front of everything, where it's like he's come off as kind of like, I don't want to say like immature, but kind of just unsure and weird throughout this whole thing. And again, it's fine to be this like vague and non-committal type of person when it comes to the media when you're winning games, because like whatever, oh, Bill Belichick did it, like that's fine. But when you're losing games, it feels very deflective and again, immature to a degree. I don't really necessarily think that's what Shane Steichen has been. It's just that's the way his media process is, and it's been horrible for this situation. But yeah, Anthony Richardson back as the starter. Again, I don't know if something changed overnight, or here's the thing. I think it had to have changed something yesterday, right? Because either way, you would have said we're evaluating the quarterback position if you planned on making this move on Wednesday. You would have said on Tuesday, we're still evaluating everything, instead of being like on Tuesday,
yeah,
Flacco is our starting quarterback,
yeah. So I think my hunch on this, and this is me working with a little bit of what I've heard, but also just kind of reading between the lines of how it operated. I think the Colts, I think they know this. So this isn't just me going at them. I think they know they handled the public declaration of the benching poorly. The fact that so many leaders in that locker room found out via social media, the fact like that those things fell through the cracks like they did, I think that couldn't happen again. Like, I think that caused a bit of what we've seen in this last couple of weeks with some of these players coming out speaking on what they did. And I don't think that's just on Shane. I think that's on the organization's management as a whole, that was a part of this decision making and how those things got out and got to the people they did. But because of that, I think you don't want to come out on Tuesday and even give the same answer they gave before the Richardson benching, where you're saying we're evaluating everything, which which why there was a 48-hour rush of people like, are they benching Anthony Richardson? And they did. So I think on Tuesday you don't come out and do that. I don't know if you necessarily had to say Joe Flacco is starting against the Jets. But I think that was kind of an overcorrection to make sure they got it right in the locker room this time around, getting the information to the people it needed to get to first. But, I mean, to quote Zaire Franklin in his advice to Anthony Richardson, sometimes just lie. Sometimes just lie on what you're doing. He did.
Yeah.
And he lied.
Yeah, very true. That was my point from the beginning, especially with the tap out thing, was like, dude, just lie. Say you were injured for a play. Like, just come out and say that you were banged up. That's fine. But I did want to hit you this really quick before we get to our second segment. And I feel like you can make a compelling argument or case either way. Do we think, now looking back, that the original Anthony Richardson benching was performance? Do you think it was not performance and like the tap out and maturity stuff, or a combination of the two? Because I feel like you can make an argument for all three of those based off, because performance, Flacco's performance was terrible, so we go back to Richardson. If you want to go maturity, obviously that's what we've heard a lot behind the scenes and said, like, and then obviously, yeah, the accumulation of the two. But what are your thoughts on that real quick?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it adds up, and I think it was a perfect storm in a sense of like, first of all, you go back a few weeks, Richardson has to miss those 2 games. Joe Flacco comes in and plays quote unquote well. Like the stat book looks better than what the product on the field was, but there were operations to where the passing game was more effective than when Richardson's on the field. I feel like that's easy to say because it was. So then there's that aspect that they got to see Flacco on the field because of an injury when in a normal situation they wouldn't have. I think there were some things going on behind the scenes that Richardson could have been doing better as a quarterback. And I think overall, I mean, I think he showed that he's 22 years old. And I think that's a big part of this that people are going to say that I'm banging the table for Richardson and I'm being too much of a defender for him, but like he has to be better in those things. And I think Steichen was a little bit more upfront about that today, about what those things were. And he may not have gotten into detail about what the X, Y, and Z mistakes were, but he pointed to where the things he has to be better at was, which is what everyone was asking for weeks. And he gave that to them today. And then I think those things going on behind the scenes paired with the tap out that became a public ordeal, and the Monday and Tuesday after that game, that was the only thing being talked about the Indianapolis Colts was Anthony Richardson having tapped out this and his soundbite being played everywhere. And whether the Colts are ever going to admit it or not, at least one person in their main decision makers obviously care about what the public view of this franchise is. And it could be anybody, and you guys could draw conclusions to who you think that would be. But it's been very evident over the years that when the public eye is on that team and honing in on some negative energy, big things have changed every single time. And I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that the free AR5 start Anthony Richardson chains have been as loud as they have been after this game, and then this change dramatically happens. Like the Colts have been a team that the public eye have been able to sway a bit when things get negative, just because of that. So it's obvious that matters. So I do think it's like a perfect storm of everything, but I do think it has to do more with what he was doing behind the scenes, not adding up, quote unquote, being the standard, one may say. But I think those things were the driving force. But I think a lot of things happening how they did kind of opened the door where it may have not opened without it.
Yeah, and we're going to continue this conversation about everything that's gone on in this Anthony Richardson, Joe Flacco debacle here coming up in just a second. But first, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And also, guys, Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players to get a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday each Tuesday. Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Think Justin Jefferson will get more than 83.5 yards next week. Lamar Jackson passed for more than 1.5 touchdowns. Cook up some hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which players aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Locked On Colts Everydayers, we are here. We're back with Destin Adams talking all about the move to Anthony Richardson. Again, the Colts have replaced their starting quarterback. And Destin, we've talked about how the Colts have kind of handled this, which in both of our opinions, that's pretty poor. They've not handled this well at all. So look, maybe behind the scenes, this is going to be some great, fantastic thing for Anthony Richardson, but I just kind of want to put this out to you. What are we gaining from this whole situation? I mean, aside from, I guess Richardson didn't get embarrassed by that Vikings defense on prime time. I guess we're happy that Flacco was the one who had to get embarrassed. I'm certainly not happy that Flacco started this past week because I think just him kneeling down on those interceptions, the Colts probably win that game against the Bills. But what did we even gain from the situation? We just got national media talking about our young quarterback more. We got crazy drama and speculation about this entire organization. Like, there had to have been something big behind the scenes that happened that changed everything for Richardson, or what did we even gain from bringing all this unnecessary drama to this situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I don't think it was their goal. I think Steichen really, you mentioned it earlier, wanted to kind of fall on the sword for a lot of different people here. I think he wanted it to, and he said it multiple times, I made this decision, like I drove this decision. I think he tried to fall on the sword for even Anthony Richardson some, saying and not releasing everything that they probably could have about why this happened. And I think their goal, and I think it's still the goal, even though it got blown out of proportion to where it was because of how poorly they handled it, is that Richardson learning the aspects that he was not succeeding at off the field, and because he's doing those things, and this is me just speaking about what some of those things could be, not necessarily saying it's what it is. But if it's him studying the film more intently, if it's him getting in the building earlier, being able to learn what formations that the defense is going to be throwing at him in this next upcoming week as a result, I think they believe those things improving are going to lead to an improved play and a more efficient quarterback overall on the field any given Sunday. So I think in their minds, as long as those things happen and you get a better quarterback and maybe you kind of halt a little bit of the regression that we saw, and not allowing it to get out of hand to where we've seen some young quarterbacks kind of get to a point where you're not fixable almost, quote unquote. So I think they're hoping that, yeah, the situation did not go our way and how we wanted it to. But if we get a better Anthony Richardson the rest of 2024, and then we get a better Anthony Richardson day one of 2025, I think in their minds, they're like, it's worth it.
Yeah. I just feel like it could have been handled so much better, man.
I think a lot of this comes back to that. I mean, we were talking about Steichen falling on swords. I mean, I think some of them were like grenades that he like opened himself, threw down, and jumped on.
Yeah.
that didn't have to be there. Like there were situations to where if you come out and answer. I mean, I even thought Jim Bob's answer on Tuesday was a really good one. Like I really thought he painted the picture really well without pointing any actual fingers on what wasn't happening, but it was giving enough to what the media and the fans could kind of run with without it being this massive storyline of what is happening. Like you allowing that to drive the narrative is why things spun so many different directions, because when you paint the picture of what is happening, the answer that you can get on that question can be so many different things. And that's why you have to point them into a direction, which is what I think Jim Bob did on Tuesday. And they didn't do that originally. And I think that really spun a lot of why this has been so poorly orchestrated.
Yeah, and a big thing too is, again, Richardson's 22 years old, and sometimes, especially if you're a high draft pick, you have a lot of things given to you. I mean, he was given the starting job last season. Sometimes you don't know what you have until you've lost it. And part of benching is kind of that. I mean, let's go to one example that actually panned out well recently, A.D. Mitchell. I mean, A.D. Mitchell had that notable moment against the Jacksonville Jaguars where he did not come back for the ball in that little hitch route. Kind of threw his hands out there and didn't come. And fans were noticeably going pretty crazy about that. And if you look at his snap counts the weeks following that game, he didn't get to see the field very often. Like Ashton Doolin was out snapping him in a lot of those games. And to a degree, that was kind of like a benching for AD Mitchell. It was a moment to step back and say, like, hey, this is not the standard that we need when you're out there, and this needs to be better. And what happens this past game when he gets a chance to start again and he's back out there? We see him throwing his whole body at footballs when that ball is coming to, like, the comeback route on the outside, he threw his whole body at. So I don't think a benching necessarily means like end of the world, you're terrible, get out of here. But again, I still think this could have been handled one of two different ways. One, scale back how much you're relying on him on offense and still have him as a starter and be like, look, until you can function as an every down passer, we're going to be a heavy run team, and we're going to really scale down what we're kind of asking you to do and simplify things and have that serious conversation behind the scenes rather than through the media. Or the second one is you do bench him and say, like, look, things are starting to spiral for this young kid. We're going to take a step back, and sometimes, this can be the fire that lights under your butt, for so to speak. I feel like those are better things, and maybe that's what they said behind the scenes to him. All I'm saying is, for us in the media, for us as fans, for us just watching this whole thing unfold, it felt very much on the fly and crazy. I mean, even this recent move feels very on the fly, and I just don't think it needed to be handled this way. As grown men handling all this situation, grown professionals, and Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard, Jim Irsay, for whatever way he's involved in this, like, we could have formulated a better plan than this. Some better plan than this could have worked. A mature plan. And like, everyone comes off as immature here. But I guess to a degree, it's all moot if it works out. Which I don't know if it will, but if it works out, it's all moot.
Especially when you think about, like, if they had a problem with how he answered the question about the tap out after the game by giving too much information, which at least some of the players did. That was something they highlighted on. If that was an issue for the team, you definitely didn't paint a good picture to the young kid about how to operate in the media after the move. So,
Right.
like, definitely just, I said it today. I mean, I think this is a learning moment for a lot of people who are in their very first or young in their career in the role that they're in. We have a first-time head coach. I mean, Chris Bauer has been around the park now as a GM for a while. This is his only GM job still. But like, having this situation occur, hopefully it is a better route for everyone going forward. And I'm just going to live knowing that the most recent interview Steichen did was a pretty dang good one. And he gave all the right answers in that one. And I think he explained things really well without even a question having to point him in that direction, even if it included one of the sound bites being, whoever I put on the field is the best option for the team to win. Other than that answer, I was pro Steichen's press conference today, which is the first time I've been a pro Steichen press conference guy in a couple weeks.
Yeah, for sure. But coming up, guys, we're going to switch from emotional reaction to more analytical reaction. We're going to look at how this move to Anthony Richardson kind of shakes things out for the rest of this Colts offense and this Colts team going forward. Hey Colts fans, remember our great partner Ultimate Pro Football GM? Well, they're back and they have added an amazing new game mode that I need to tell y'all about. The game has you step up into the shoes of a football franchise GM and lead it to glory. Now has a new head coach career mode. So on top of getting to build your dynasty by drafting players, signing free agents, and hiring coaching staff, you can also call offensive plays in the game as well. Additionally, you'll dig the new tools you can work with, such as individual training camps and upgraded negotiation system. So this fun and realistic game just got so much better. If you already have it installed, make sure that you update it so you can try out the new mode. If you don't have it yet, download it right now. It's a must-have for all football fans. I love it, and I know you all will too. Ultimate Pro Football GM is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline, play on the go, and as you want and when you want to. And here's a special offer for Locked On fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your franchise. Make sure to get it, as this perk will jumpstart your play and give you the advantage you'll want in creating a dynasty. To download the game, and just visit ultimate-gm.com, ultimate-gm.com, or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate Pro Football GM, start your dynasty today. All right, Locked On Colts everydayers, we are back talking Anthony Richardson to the starting lineup yet again. And all the emotion stuff aside and all of the past couple weeks aside, Destin, I'm happy for this move for the Colts offense. Not because Anthony Richardson's just this perfect savior. He's not the Billy Mays flex tape that you throw over a crack and it fixes everything. Like that's not what this is, right? But it does give a floor back to this offense. The floor that this offense has desperately missed. I know Jonathan Taylor rushed fairly well this past week, but that was on 3 runs for like 98 yards. The other like 21 runs were for like 18 yards in this past game. So the running game has still been pretty putrid without Anthony Richardson. So the Colts are bringing back a top 10 to 12-ish rushing success rate with Richardson stepping in. I mean, Jonathan Taylor almost averages a whole yard more per carry with Anthony Richardson at quarterback. So you get the run game back, you get early down success back despite the incompletions, and you get explosive plays back on offense. And here's the thing. So if Richardson is just how he was earlier in the year, that floor is still better than what Flacco's been giving the Colts these past couple weeks. And if he can just build a little bit off that floor, we're talking about a pretty decent offense. So really for the rest of the year, it's just hoping that he can build off that floor because he's been right around that floor in his other starts this season. He just needs to build off that floor a little bit. I don't need you to be a 70% passer. I don't need you to be perfect on every area of the field. Be like a 55% passer that can get me out of some third. Be a 55% passer and be the 20th best third down offense. And we're talking about 30 points per game with this offense. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to be better than what it was early in this season. And it needs to raise that floor a little bit. But I'm excited about getting a floor back in this offense. That is at least an exciting thing, that we can't see the bottom drop out like we saw these past 2 weeks with Joe Flacco.
Yeah, I mean, I think the trading the run game efficiency for the pass game efficiency, which comes with the Flacco Richardson move. I think the reason that I kind of disagreed with the Joe Flacco gives us the best chance to win games right away was because the run game needs to be your identity right now. Anthony Richardson is not an efficient enough passer for that to be what drives this offense. It needs to be a factor, and it needs to be something that when you need it, you can make plays with it. And I think we kind of saw that earlier in the season where he gives you a chance against a Houston team week 1 that I don't think a lot of people had them in that game. And even though he plays like he did, his completion percentage was where it was in week 1. They were in punching distance. And even in his last game as a starter before he's benched, they're in punching distance in that game because of his ability to make those plays. And I think trading it to the run game and letting that be what drives you is going to be big, because the mystery that lives with Richardson in the backfield is huge for defenses. There is not a single linebacker on the opposite side of the field that is comfortable when Richardson is on the field trying to dictate whether it's going to be Richardson or Taylor that gets the ball there. Because if it is Richardson, being as patient as he is to hit a hole, if any linebacker bites on that, any safety that's coming down bites on Richardson on the fake, that gives Taylor a entirely bigger hole, entirely faster time to be able to hit it. And you've seen what we saw against Buffalo with Flacco, even in that one big run that he was able to pull off. You give Richardson, you give Taylor an inch, he can go a mile. And I think Richardson in the lineup gives that even a couple of inches to Taylor that I think is going to be really, really impactful going forward. Now, the offensive line is going to be interesting to kind of see just because of will Ryman be back this week? They had him as a DNP on the walkthrough today, which means he would not have practiced if there was a practice, which is not a great sign that they couldn't even put the limited participant just as a non-practice day. So we'll have to see where that thing goes. I don't think Gonzalez has been bad. I think he's had a couple moments that were not great this past week. A lot of them I thought were in pass pro personally, which is kind of what I thought on his film of why a lot of NFL teams were viewing him as a guard and not a tackle, were because I think his run, he's a little bit more well sound in the run game than he is the pass game. So giving him a mobile quarterback, if he does have to play left tackle for a couple of weeks, could be a big boost for even his numbers. But I'm very excited for the run game in Indianapolis to be fun again. I'm excited to kind of see where that goes and what they do. It definitely needs to not just be Taylor between the tackles. They have to get creative, and I think Richardson allows them to get creative in the run game.
Yeah, and I will say this, for, again, I think Richardson gives them a better floor for the offense, and I think he brings more elements back to the offense. But I will say this about Richardson. There needs to be some tangible improvement over what we saw earlier this season, because let's say he goes through these final 7 games and he starts every single one of them, and it's kind of much of the same that we saw early this season, where 30 to 40% completion rate, and you get some wins in there because of the running stuff, but not perfect. The Colts will have about 17 games of data on him at this point through 2 seasons, and you can have enough to kind of make a decision from there on what you want to do going into the next season. So for his sake, for Steichen's sake, for Chris Ballard's sake, they need this to end off on the right foot compared to how this season started. There was some regression early this season as a passer. Some bad tendencies showed up, some forcing the ball, some misses. There were obviously maturity things, I guess, behind the scenes that we can't really talk on, but I guess have been happening behind the scenes. So these last 7 games are really big for him, just to show that he can turn it around and turn some of that regression into progression. Like, it doesn't need to be perfect by the end of the season, but it needs to be better than where it was when he got benched earlier this year. Because if it stays around that same level, I'm not saying the Colts should move off of him going into the offseason, but I think they have a compelling case to. Whereas if he can show some positive steps, he can win some games with his arm and with his legs, then I think it's a harder decision for the Colts, and you probably earn yourself a whole nother year. I mean, and that's not even just him. That's also Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard. I mean, everyone is committed to making this thing work. So he's got to go out there and he's got to perform a little bit these final games. And he's going to have this 7-game stretch to really show it. Like, it's not make or break for him, but it's pretty darn close to make or break for him in these final 7 games. It doesn't have to make the playoffs. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to be pretty close to like make or break for him in these final 7 games. And you got to see some progression from a guy who, again, 2 weeks ago was benched for the corpse of Joe Flacco.
I think there was a lot of talk also about like how few instances there have been where a young quarterback is benched in this capacity, and the team goes back to them. Very, very few, for those that didn't read those pieces that were put out. But I think a situation that nowhere near a one-for-one comparison, but just something that I really think could just be a different approach. I remember early on in Tua's career how the Miami Dolphins would go with the bringing Fitzpatrick in as like the closer type of role, which is a very unique situation. There's been very few things that I've ever seen like that, but they did that for like 4 or 5 games in a row, to where Tua was the guy, the starter, and then in close games, Fitzpatrick would come in the fourth quarter and play that role in games. And it was how they got to Tua to try and make him make those mental improvements in his game. I would like to see Richardson make very similar adjustments. I mean, first pass into this one, would love to see like a 7-yard out route on the dot. Just like something like that just like screams that like he's learning. Even some of the things we saw him as a rookie do well. Like I really enjoyed the few games that we got to watch him last year, like how solid he was at attacking the blitz, with quick throws in the RPO system. I really feel like that was one of the big areas we saw regression in this year, where he wasn't making those quick hitters. He was keeping the ball in those RPOs, and he was looking elsewhere down the field, because I think it's very obvious this kid has a craving for the deep ball, and I think you got to figure out what that healthy medium is. And I'm excited to kind of see this week against the Jets and so on. I mean, this will be a good defense for it to be against. I mean, they're a solid group, really solid young pass rushing group, and have some ups and downs in pass coverage, even though they have a really good secondary duo. There have been quarterbacks that have been able to pick on them a bit because they get a little bit too aggressive. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what Richardson can do here. But I agree. You have to show improvement down the stretch. And I think the big thing is, this is for the Colts in general, him playing the rest of this, you're not going to have that question at the end of the year about that we don't have enough on the kid, because not having an answer to the question, is he our franchise quarterback, is worse than being able to say no.
Yeah, to a degree, I completely agree with you there. So let us know what you think in the comment section. The Colts moving back to Anthony Richardson. You excited? You disappointed for whatever reason? Let us know in the comment section. Yeah.
There's some, Zach.
I guess, yeah. If you want to be disappointed, please let us know in the comment section. We also want to thank you guys for making Locked On Culture first listen today. Now, for your second listen, go find the new Locked On NFL with 2 shows every day. First, the Madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. If you want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly and get the insider scoop, follow the link in our show notes. And if you don't already, make sure you follow at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, at Zach Hicks 2, and at the Destin Adams, all on Twitter. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings and reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow for Crossover Thursday.